My childhood bully made my life a living hell. Years later, we ended up as business partners, and what happened shocked me. You know that one person in high school who could make your life miserable just by walking into the room? Yeah, for me, that was Jake Carter. Even now, years later, I can still hear the sound of his laugh, that sharp, mocking kind of laugh that didn't just make fun of you, but made everyone else around you feel like they had permission to do it too. I wasn't the cool kid in high school. Far from it. I was the quiet, awkward guy who liked sketching in the back of class, listened to way too much indie music, and wore hoodies even in summer because I didn't like people looking at me. My safe space was the art room, and my worst nightmare was the hallway between second and third period, because that's when Jake would usually strike. Locker shoving? Oh, he was a pro. He had this move where he'd be just walking by and somehow slam your locker door shut right when you were leaning in to grab your books. More than once, I ended up smacking my forehead on cold metal while he grinned at his friends. And the mocking. He didn't just call me names, he got creative. One time I wore this thrift store jacket I really liked. Kind of military style, olive green. The first thing Jake says when he sees me is, "Nice jacket, private loser. You gonna lead us into battle against the math test?" By lunch, half the school was calling me private loser. But the worst moments? Those were when he decided to mess with me in front of my crush. There was this girl, Megan, in my English class. Sweet, smart, actually talked to me sometimes. One day, I'm standing at my locker, trying to work up the courage to ask her about a group project we were assigned. She's smiling, holding her books, waiting for me to speak, and that's when Jake appears out of nowhere. He puts an arm around my shoulders like we're best friends and says, "Hey Megan, did you know Ethan writes love poems about you?" Yeah, he's got a whole notebook. Calls it the Megan Files. I didn't, obviously, but the way she looked at me, awkward smile, eyes darting away, burned empty into my brain. She mumbled something about having to get to class and left, while Jake laughed so hard he had to hold onto a locker for balance. That was sophomore year. By junior year, it escalated. Jake didn't just pick on me, he made me a running joke. He'd spread rumors, like the time he told everyone I failed gym because I couldn't climb the rope. True, but not the point. Or the time he convinced half the lunch table that I cried during a horror movie. Also true, but again, not the point. But here's the thing about Jake, and I hate admitting this every once in a while. He'd do something decent. Not nice exactly, but decent enough to make you think maybe he's not completely awful. Like the time a senior named Kyle tried to shove me into a trash can after school. I was halfway in when Jake appeared out of nowhere, grabbed Kyle by the collar, and told him to back off. Then, without missing a beat, he looked at me and said, "Don't get used to it, private loser. You're my punching bag, not his." And just like that, he walked away. Or the time I left my sketchbook in the cafeteria and thought it was gone forever. The next morning, it was sitting on top of my locker. No note, no explanation, but I caught Jake watching me from down the hall with this weird half smile. It was confusing as hell. Senior year rolled around, and I was counting the days until graduation, like a prisoner counting scratches on a wall. My plan was simple: get my diploma, get the hell out, and never think about Jake Carter again. But of course, he wasn't done. Prom season. I wasn't going to date, no interest, but Jake somehow decided I was going. One afternoon, he corners me in the hallway and says, "So, you're gonna ask Megan to prom, right?" I mean, I already told her you would. I stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "Why would you do that?" He shrugged. "It's funny." Long story short, I had to awkwardly tell Megan it wasn't true, which somehow made me look even weirder. Jake got his laugh. But here's the twist. 2 weeks before graduation, something happened that stuck with me. It was after school, raining hard. I was walking home, hoodie pulled tight, when I heard someone yelling. I turned the corner and saw Jake. Yes, Jake standing between two huge seniors and the scrawny freshman I'd seen around. The seniors were trying to take the kid's backpack. Jake wasn't backing down. He shoved one of them, took a punch to the shoulder, and still didn't move. Eventually, they gave up and walked away. I just stood there, soaked, staring. Jake looked at the freshman, tossed his bag back, and muttered, "Don't be stupid enough to walk down here again." Then he saw me. For a second, I thought he'd make some joke, but instead he just nodded like we were on the same team for a fraction of a second and kept walking. Graduation day came, and I can't explain the relief I felt walking across that stage. My parents clapped, my name was called, and when I shook the principal's hand, I knew I was free. I spotted Jake in the crowd afterward, surrounded by friends. Our eyes met for half a second. He gave me a little salute, mocking maybe, but without the usual smirk. That was the last time I saw him, or at least that's what I thought. If you've ever tried starting your own company, you know it's less living the dream and more working yourself into the ground while living on instant noodles. That's where I was. About 8 years after high school, I'd gotten my degree in computer science. done a couple of short stints at software firms, and then because I'm either ambitious or stupid, decided to start my own tech company. I called it Brightwave Solutions. Cool name, right? Sounds like a legit company. In reality, Brightwave was me, two part-time developers I'd met at a hackathon, and my friend Priya, who handled the occasional marketing email, all crammed into a rented office space above a dry cleaner. The office smelled faintly like fabric softener and steam burns. But hey, it was ours. The problem was, owning an office doesn't magically pay for rent, salaries, or the fact that our company fridge was just a mini cooler with off-brand soda. We had the skills, we had the ideas. What we didn't have was money, or clients willing to pay more than exposure, which, for the record, you cannot use to pay your internet bill. I'd been pulling 14-hour days, sleeping on a couch that had seen better decades, and mainlining coffee like it was a personality trait. Every time we thought we'd landed a big client, the deal fell through or the budget got slashed. Then one day I got the email. Subject: partnership proposal, urgent opportunity from Harrison Locke, Capital Ventures. If you've never heard of Harrison Locke, they're basically the gatekeepers for mid-sized startups in my city. You got their backing, you were golden. You didn't, well, good luck eating something other than noodles. The email said they'd been following our work, liked our last prototype demo, and were interested in funding us to the tune of 6 figures if we could scale up fast and prove we could handle client relations. The if was bolded. Never a good sign. I walked into the office with the biggest smile I'd had in months. Guys, this could be it, I told Priya and the devs, waving my laptop like it was a winning lottery ticket. Priya scanned the email, then frowned. What's the catch? The catch, I said, is they want us to partner with someone who can handle sales, networking, and client relationships, someone with a proven track record. Okay, that's not terrible, Priya said. You're not the most adult people-y person. Gee, thanks. No, I mean it. You're great at the tech side, but clients like schmoozing. They like handshakes, dinners, golf courses. We don't exactly scream corporate charm. I sighed. Yeah, well, they already have someone in mind. That's when I saw the email attachment, a PDF with the recommended partner's profile. And there it was. Name, Jake Carter. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. Surely there were other Jake Carters in the world. But then I saw the headshot, that same smirk, just older and paired with an expensive-looking suit. According to the PDF, Jake was now a senior client strategist at some boutique consulting firm with a track record of securing multi-million-dollar deals. I closed the laptop and just sat there, staring at the wall. My heart was pounding in that same nervous, fight-or-flight way it used to when I saw him in the high school hallway. Priya noticed immediately. You look like you've seen a ghost. Worse, I said. I've seen my high school bully. I didn't sleep much that night. My brain was in overdrive. On one hand, this was the opportunity Brightwave needed, maybe the only one we'd get. On the other, working with Jake, the guy who made my teenage years a nightmare. It felt like the universe was playing some twisted joke. By morning, I convinced myself to at least meet with him. I told myself I'd be professional, keep it short, and only agree if he was willing to stay strictly business. The meeting was set for Friday at a coffee shop downtown. I got there early, sat at a corner table, and tried to calm my nerves. At exactly 10 a.m., he walked in. I'll give him this. He looked different, taller somehow, even though I know that's impossible. Confident, well-dressed, the smirk was still there, but it was subtler now. More like he was permanently in on some inside joke. Ethan Matthews, he said, walking over like we were old friends. Man, it's been a long time. Not long enough, I muttered under my breath. He either didn't hear me or chose to ignore it. You look good, he said, sitting down without asking. I've been keeping an eye on Brightwave. You've built something solid. I raised an eyebrow. Since when do you care about what I'm building? He leaned back, hands folded. Since Harrison Locke reached out to me. They think we'd make a good team. I couldn't help laughing, not the funny kind, the disbelieving kind. A good team? You made my life hell for 4 years, Jake. You didn't flinch. Yeah, I know. And I'm not here to pretend that didn't happen, but this isn't high school anymore. We both have something the other needs. I can bring in the deals, you can deliver the product, we can both make a lot of money. I stared at him, trying to read his expression. Was this genuine, or was I walking into some long con? Why me? I finally asked. Because you're good, he said simply. And because I'm good at selling what you do. We sat there for an hour talking terms. He was confident, persuasive, and annoyingly likable when he wanted to be. By the end, I hated to admit it, but he wasn't wrong. We agreed on a trial partnership 3 months. If it worked, we'd formalize it. If not, we'd walk away. As we shook hands, I felt this weird mix of dread and curiosity. I didn't know if I'd just made the best decision of my life or the stupidest. The first week of working with Jake was exactly as uncomfortable as you'd expect when your former high school bully is now your business partner. We'd agreed on a 3-month trial partnership. That meant he'd handle all sales calls, networking events, and client meetings, while I'd oversee product development and tech delivery. On paper, it was a perfect division of labor. In reality, It was like oil and water trying to work together in a hurricane. Our very first meeting as partners was with a mid-sized marketing agency interested in our latest platform. I was setting up the demo, minding my own business, when Jake leaned over and whispered, "Don't use too much jargon, Matthews. These guys glaze over if you get too technical." I bit back the urge to remind him I'd been doing presentations before he knew what a CRM was. Instead, I forced a smile. "Thanks for the tip, Carter. I'll try to use small words." He grinned like I'd just made his day. Attaboy. The meeting itself went better than I'd expected, largely because Jake was annoyingly good in a room. He had this way of making clients feel like they were the most interesting people he'd ever met. He'd laugh at their jokes, remember details about their kids or vacations, and subtly guide the conversation back to how our product could solve their exact problems. And the worst part? It worked. By the end of the meeting, the agency's director was already talking about next steps and long-term contracts. As we left, Jake clapped me on the back. "See? We make a good team." I muttered something about beginner's luck, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. Over the next few weeks, we fell into a rhythm, a tense, sarcastic rhythm, but a rhythm nonetheless. Mornings usually started with us arguing over strategy. "We should expand into mid-tier clients first," Jake would say. "No," I'd counter. "We need one big client to build credibility." "Yeah, and if we screw it up, we're dead. If we waste time chasing small fish, we'll starve before we get anywhere." Half the time, Priya would step in like some overworked referee. "You two sound like an old married couple. Just pick a lane and stick to it." Afternoons were a mix of coding marathons on my end and networking calls on his. Every now and then, I'd overhear him from across the office, his voice all charm and confidence. "Absolutely, we can customize that feature for you. Ethan's a wizard with this stuff. Yes, I'll personally make sure the rollout goes smoothly. Oh, don't worry, I'll keep him away from the code talk until after lunch." I'd roll my eyes, but I couldn't deny that clients liked him. The first time I saw him be, well, protective of me was during a pitch to a potential investor. We were in this sleek downtown office, glass walls everywhere, the kind of place where the water coolers probably dispense sparkling mineral water. I was halfway through explaining our product when one of the investors, an older guy in a suit worth more than my car, cut me off. "Listen, son," he said, leaning back in his chair. "I don't need the nerd talk. Just tell me if it's going to make money." I froze for a second. Years of high school mockery came flooding back. Nerd was one of Jake's greatest hits. Before I could respond, Jake spoke up. His tone was casual, but there was an edge to it. "If you don't want the nerd talk, then you're talking to the wrong company. Ethan built this thing from the ground up. You either listen to him or you're going to miss out on something big." The room went silent for a beat. Then Jake smiled, like he just told a joke, and the tension eased. But I noticed the way he looked at me afterward, like he was silently saying, "Don't mention it." One night, about a month in, I stayed late at the office working on a client customization. It was close to midnight when I realized Jake was still there, sitting at his desk, phone pressed to his ear. I was about to grab my bag and leave when I overheard his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "Yeah, I know, kiddo. I'm sorry I missed your game. I'll make the next one, I promise." I froze. "Don't listen to Dad, okay? He's just being Dad. You're doing great. I'm proud of you." There was a long pause, then a quiet laugh. "Yeah, I'll bring you that pizza next time. Extra cheese." He hung up a minute later and didn't notice me standing by the door. I didn't say anything, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The way his voice changed from the confident, cocky salesman to a guy who clearly cared about whoever was on the other end, it didn't fit the Jake Carter I'd known in high school. It made me wonder if I'd ever really known him at all. The next morning, when he walked in with coffee for everyone, something he never did, I almost asked him about it, but then he made a crack about my bedhead, and the moment passed. We still fought about strategy. We still got on each other's nerves, but little by little, the edges started to soften. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I caught myself thinking, maybe, just maybe, this could work. If you've ever worked late with someone you have unresolved history with, you know how weirdly quiet it can get. It was one of those nights. The office was empty except for me and Jake, the glow of our monitors casting shadows across the walls. Outside, the city was muffled by steady rain. We'd been grinding through a last-minute client request for hours, Jake chasing down contract approvals. Me buried in code when the Wi-Fi decided to die at 11:37 p.m. I swore under my breath. Jake leaned back in his chair, tossing his pen onto the desk. "Well, guess the universe is telling us to take a break." Normally, I'd have just packed up and gone home. But something about the rain, the dim office, and the fact that we'd been slowly building this uneasy truce over the last month made me stay put. We sat there in silence for a minute, the kind where you can almost hear the other person's thoughts. "You ever think about high school?" Jake asked suddenly. I shot him a look. "Not if I can help it." He smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah, me neither. Or at least I try not to." I didn't respond, My brain was already flashing back to lockers, hallways, and all the crap he used to pull. Jake stared at his desk for a moment, then said, "You know, I was a real piece of work back then." "That's one way to put it," I muttered. He gave a short laugh. "Fair. I owe you an explanation." Now, if you told me back in high school that Jake Carter would one day voluntarily open up to me, I would have laughed in your face. But that night, he did. He started talking, not in his usual confident, I own the room voice, but in this quieter tone I'd never heard before. "My dad," he paused, like he was trying to figure out where to start. "Let's just say he wasn't exactly father of the year. Big guy, mean drunk, the kind who could make you feel small without even raising his voice. And if he did raise his voice, you'd better hope he didn't raise his hand too." I didn't say anything. I just let him talk. Money was always tight. He worked construction when he wasn't between jobs. Mom worked double shifts at the diner just to keep the lights on. And me? He shrugged. I was the oldest. That meant I had to make sure my brother and sister ate, got their homework done, didn't piss off dad. It was like being a third parent before I was even 16. I leaned back in my chair, trying to picture it. Jake, the cocky, untouchable guy from high school, playing babysitter and peacekeeper. "Thing is," he went on, "I couldn't let anyone know. You show weakness at home, you're screwed. You show weakness at school, you're dead meat." That's when he looked at me. So I picked someone to mess with. Someone smart, but not popular enough that anyone would stop me. Someone I knew wouldn't hit back. My chest tightened. "So you made me your target because what? I was easy?" His jaw tightened. "Because I was scared and angry and too damn stupid to figure out a better way to deal with it." I wanted to be angry. I really did. I wanted to tell him that his reasons didn't erase the years of crap I'd put up with because of him. But hearing him talk about it, the image of the guy who seemed to have it all together back then, didn't line up with the reality he was describing. "You ever think about apologizing?" I asked finally. Jake let out a slow breath. "Every day since I realized how much damage I probably did. But apologies are easy. Changing, that's the hard part." We sat there in silence again, the rain tapping against the window. After a while, I said, "You could have just been nice, you know? I wouldn't have told anyone you had a rough home life." He gave a sad smile. "Yeah, but back then, being nice felt like painting a target on my own back, and I already had one at home." Something in my chest shifted. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was the first time I'd looked at Jake and seen more than just the guy who made my life hell. The Wi-Fi came back eventually, but neither of us went back to work right away. Instead, we ended up talking for another hour, not just about high school, but about life after it. He told me his mom finally left his dad when Jake was in college. His sister's now in nursing school. His brother runs a small landscaping business. I told him about Bright Wave's early struggles, the nights I almost quit, the weight of knowing my team's livelihoods depended on me. And for the first time, it didn't feel like I was talking to my bully. It felt like I was talking to a person. When we finally packed up and left, Jake stopped me at the door. "Hey," he said. "For what it's worth, I am sorry, Ethan. I really am." I nodded. "We'll see if you can prove it." He grinned faintly. "Fair enough." As I stepped out into the rain, I realized something I never thought I'd admit. I wasn't sure I hated Jake Carter anymore. I swear, life moves in ways you can't predict. One minute you're sharing late night takeout with the guy who made your life hell in high school, and the next you're in a suit walking into one of the biggest industry events of your career and he's your business partner. After that night, when Jake finally told me about his past, the abusive dad, the pressure, the siblings, something shifted between us. I didn't forgive him instantly. I'm not some saint who hears a sob story and wipes the slate clean, but I understood him. And that understanding, it made working together a whole lot easier. The weeks after were a blur of coffee cups, sleepless nights, and holy crap, we might actually pull this off moments. Jake's a beast when it comes to networking. I mean, the guy could probably sell ice to a penguin. He's confident, charming, and somehow always knows the right people. Me, I'm the one buried in code, making sure our product actually works. It became this unspoken rhythm. Oh, he opened doors. I made sure what was inside those doors was worth showing off. We just landed a couple mid-sized clients, enough to keep the lights on, when Jake tells me, "There's this conference coming up. Big players. If we can get noticed there, we're set." I wasn't exactly thrilled. I'm more of a behind-the-scenes guy, and the idea of schmoozing with CEOs and investors sounded like torture. But Jake was relentless. "Ethan," he said, "we can't just build something great. We have to make people see it." So I went. The conference was huge. Rows of booths, banners hanging from the ceiling, people walking around with lanyards like badges of honor. Jake was in his element, shaking hands, laughing, introducing me like I was the next Steve Jobs. And honestly, for the first time, I didn't feel like the quiet tech guy. I felt like part of a team. Midway through day 2, Jake pulls me aside. "I just talked to someone you need to meet. CEO of a company I've been chasing for months. This is our shop." I don't even remember walking over, just the adrenaline pumping in my ears. We pitched like our lives depended on it. Jake doing his smooth talking, me jumping in with the tech specs, answering every question like I'd been rehearsing for years. And then they smiled. Let's talk numbers. That was it. We closed our biggest deal ever right there. I didn't even realize I was grinning until Jake clapped me on the back so hard I nearly choked. That night, there was this big networking mixer. Normally, I'd be in the corner, sipping my drink and counting down the minutes until I could go home. But Jake kept dragging me into conversations, introducing me to everyone like I was the reason we existed. And then, in front of a whole group of execs, he says it. Honestly, this guy's the reason we're here. I might get people to listen, but Ethan's the one who makes sure we have something worth listening to. Back in high school, I never imagined I'd be standing here saying this, but I'm proud to be his partner. You ever have one of those moments where time just stops? I could feel my ears burning. Me, the kid he used to shove into lockers, was being credited publicly by the same guy, and not in a fake PR way. He meant it. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded and said, guess we make a pretty good team. The crazy part, I actually meant it. If someone had told 16-year-old me that one day I'd walk back into my old high school with Jake, of all people, as my business partner, I would have laughed in their face, probably while hiding in the back corner of the library, pretending I didn't hear him and his friends snickering down the hallway. But life has a funny way of throwing you plot twists you never saw coming. Our company was thriving. The last few months had been an absolute whirlwind, landing clients I once thought were untouchable, closing deals that made my old salary look like pocket change, and getting our names mentioned in business blogs I used to read for inspiration. It was wild. Jake was killing it on the networking side. I'd finally stopped bracing myself for him to mess something up. In fact, there were days where I'd just watch him work a room and think, damn, that's why we're winning. And apparently, people were noticing. One Tuesday afternoon, our old high school principal reached out. She'd heard about our success and wanted us to come back and give a talk to the senior class about entrepreneurship, resilience, and teamwork. I'll be honest, my first reaction was absolutely not. Going back meant facing that awkward, pit in your stomach feeling that never really leaves you when you've been that kid in school. The quiet one, the easy target, the one people whispered about. Jake, of course, was all for it. Come on, man, he said over lunch, grinning like this was going to be fun. Think about it. We get to show the next generation that the world's bigger than high school. Plus, I think you need this. I rolled my eyes. I'm not looking for closure, Jake. Sure, he smirked. And I don't check my hair in every reflective surface I walk past. The day of the talk, I stood outside those familiar double doors, my heart pounding like I was late for class again. The hallways smelled exactly the same, some weird mix of floor cleaner and cafeteria pizza. My stomach twisted. Jake noticed. You okay? Fine, I lied. He clapped me on the back. Hey, you're not the same guy you were back then, and neither am I. We walked into the auditorium, and just like that, the noise hit the chatter of hundreds of students, the scraping of chairs, the buzz of phones. A few teachers recognized Jake right away, giving him those "you were a handful, but look at you now" smiles. When it was our turn to speak, Jake went first. He told the story of how we started, sprinkling in humor and the kind of charm that kept every kid in the room engaged. I could see heads nodding, people actually listening. Then it was my turn. I took a deep breath and started talking about the reality of building something from scratch, the late nights, the failures, the times I thought it was over before it began. I told them how the person you think is your enemy might just end up being your greatest ally, if you're both willing to grow. And that's when Jake did something I never saw coming. He stepped back up to the mic, looked straight at the students, then at me. I want to say something I never said in high school, he began, his voice quieter now. Ethan, I'm sorry for the crap I pulled back then, for making your life harder when you were just trying to get through the day. And I'm sorry it took me years to see what you're worth, not just as a partner, but as a person. The room went silent. You could hear the air conditioning hum. He kept going. I used to think being the loudest guy in the room made me important. Turns out, the smartest guy in the room was the one I ignored. That was my loss. I'm lucky as hell I got a second chance. I swear. My throat tightened. I wasn't expecting that, not in front of an entire auditorium. Not so raw and unpolished. The students actually clapped. A few teachers too. I just stood there for a second, processing that the guy who once made my life miserable was now standing beside me, telling the world he was proud of me. We finished the talk, answered some questions, and as we walked out into the hallway, it hit me. We were equals now. No grudges, no power imbalance, just two guys who'd been through the fire together and come out stronger. Outside, the autumn air was crisp. Jake shoved his hands in his pockets, smirking. You know, he said, if you told me 10 years ago I'd be apologizing to you in front of a bunch of teenagers, I would have said you were insane. I laughed. If you told me I'd accept it, I would have said the same. And just like that, we walked off school grounds, ready for whatever was next, together.